The adrenal types favor savory foods rather than starchy foods, and they put on weight by eating fats and lose weight by eating salads or carbs. Whereas the thyroid dominant are gaining weight by starch and losing weight by fat. The third one is the pituitary. They usually crave creamy things, whipping cream, ice cream, creamy stuff. And to them, their health food is salad, but the most healthful thing to them is organ meats.
Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now, here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Michelson. And today we're joined by Martin Pytela, the founder and CEO of Life Enthusiast. He's a respected functional medicine expert and metabolic typing coach whose mission is to restore vitality to you and the planet. In today's conversation, we're talking about metabolic typing and how it can help support mood, weight, energy, and overall health. Martin shares his experience and wisdom regarding how we can create individualized eating plans, as well as how we can compensate for living in modern society in order to support optimal health. Martin, welcome to the podcast.
I feel honored to meet a compatriot, somebody who has a lot in common with me.
We do. I know. I just promised you I will only keep you your allotted time, but I'm very excited for our conversation. And I would love for listeners that aren't familiar with you, I would love for you to share a bit of your own health journey and how you entered this functional medicine world and have become a trailblazer.
Right. Well, the genetics, I have poor methylation. And I grew up in Czechoslovakia in a fairly rural setting. My father was a veterinarian. So I ate well, although not according to my type. But that's another story. And then when I was 24, I decided to leave the communist prison and left for Canada. And there, about 3 months in on a sawmill job, I was working physically. I was a strong 24-year-old. Then I had my insurance paid for by the union that was, unionized shop. Everything was beautiful. I went to a dentist and I said, I haven't had a checkup in 2 years. I'm here. And the first question out of their mouth was, do you have insurance? And silly me, I said, oh, yes, I do.
Sure.
And then the next thing was, okay, let's do x-rays. And then on the x-rays, he showed me how terrible my teeth were and how they needed replacements. And then he said, well, you can have the silver fillings. They're included in your insurance, or you can have the white ones. They cost extra.
Oh.
And I didn't know any different.
Sure.
Said, well, silver is fine. I don't care what it looks like.
Yeah.
He withheld the detail that it came with mercury.
It's a bonus.
And so there started my decline. I was a pretty sick 25 and really sick 35-year-old. And it was, my body couldn't cope with the mercury. And so I started going downhill. My main symptoms were the physical structure going to hell.
Yeah.
Back problems, carpal tunnel, plantar fasciitis, back going out all the time in major ways. Like I would spend weeks crawling on the floor.
Oh, goodness.
From the armchair to the toilet and back because I couldn't stand up.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Sleeping face down on a rocking chair because I couldn't lay on my back.
Wow. And
So
not from a traumatic injury. No. From decline. Yeah.
All just going downhill. And of course, I had no clue. I grew up in a doctor's family. I believed in science. Dad and I discussed principles, or I think they're called postulates and stuff. And, I watched him go do vaccinations and all that. mainstream stuff.
Right.
So I believed in science.
Sure.
So it took me a while to give up on first the surgeons, then on the chiropractors, and then on the naturopaths. And I tried all kinds of stuff, esoteric all the way.
And nothing helped.
Well, it all helped, right? The chiropractor would put me back in alignment, but my discs were weakened by the toxicity. So I would lose the alignment sometimes in a week, sometimes in 2 days, sometimes on the way home from the adjustment. So I would go in maybe twice a week to get myself put back together. And it's a maintenance thing.
Sure.
I had allergies. I went to the naturopath. They did the allergy test and said, well, you have allergies, eliminate foods. I went to the doctor. He said, we have Sudafed. And I said, will that heal me? He said, no, you'll be taking it for the rest of your life. And
I think when we hear those words, it's time to run.
Which I was really not wanting to admit that all of them were wrong. But in the end, it came to this. They were chasing symptoms. Right. They would see the symptom, they would try and adjust it or tweak it or whatever. Not one of them asked what's the cause of it.
Right.
And somewhere along the way, I had a hair trace mineral analysis done. And I remember puzzling, why is the mercury high?
Yeah.
Finally, years later, once I dove into the books, I read a lot. And so eventually I figured out that it was the mercury, and I found zeolite, which was phenomenally effective at binding and getting it out of me. And I also used humic acid, fulvic acid, and then I found a doctor who formulated a free-form amino acid formula, which corrected or compensated for the broken gut, right? Or once you have mercury, you have a broken gut, leaky gut. And so that's why the allergies and other things came by. And then finally, about 10 years in, I had this, you cannot carry on like this. I was getting suicidal, really. And just dark moods, not really ready to do it, but just really, And what else now?
That's a lot. It was just through your own research and reading, or because you did get the hair analysis done? Because I think even today, even with podcasts and biological dentistry and much more readily available information, people don't necessarily connect the dots between amalgam fillings and mercury toxicity and chronic illness.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
To this day, they deny the connection.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the people who are not poor methylators, which is about half of the population, are coping. Not well, but coping, right? I was totally in the not coping, right? And so that's how they get away with pretending that everything's fine. It's not us, it's you.
Gotcha. Because it's not everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Therefore, it's not the thing, right? That the mainstream medical approach, if you can find an exception, it's not us.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, well, anyway, I figured it out. I did the amino acids. They started compensating for the defective digestion. So my discs strengthened. So I no longer had this wobbly spine. And
amazing.
By the time I was 45, I was pretty healthy. And about that time, that it was 1999, I decided to go rural. And that forced me to start making a living. And out of desperation, I thought, what do I know? Well, I know how to build a website, and I know a lot about chronically ill people. So let's put that together. And sure enough, I stopped being a management consultant and I became a health consultant.
Amazing. Lucky for everybody that found you and has found you. And it is so interesting. It's very rare that I interview someone who, doesn't have a personal story that brought them to functional medicine, or call it whatever you want, but to root cause medicine and healing modalities that you might not find at your PCP's office. Yeah,
maybe it takes a major disaster to propel us the desperation of
Sure.
necessity.
That's where change
propelled
comes
us
from.
to just give up on the mainstream ideas and just break out into somewhere else. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you did it yourself, right?
Oh, yeah. Same thing after 11 years of decline.
My limit was about 10. At 10, I
You were
just
quicker than me. So I want to share one of the things that your journey has led you to is becoming an expert in metabolic typing, which is something we have not talked about on the podcast before. So I'm excited for you to share your knowledge with listeners. So what does that even mean? What is metabolic typing?
There's quite a bit of history, but back in 1987, Bill Walcott finally put together the fact that there are two dominances and humans are one of them. And it's sort of like left-handed and right-handed. Like if you are a right-handed person, right-hand dominant, your guitar is going to be played this way.
Right.
But if you're left-handed dominant, you're going to be playing it this way, which is similar enough, but you have to have the guitar strung differently for it to work.
Gotcha.
Well, in this metaphor, we have oxidizers and autonomics. An oxidizer dominant person will be alkalized by fats and proteins and acidified by carbs. And the other one, the autonomic, is reversed. He's alkalized by carbs and acidified by fats and proteins. And what this means is the following. As you drift with your pH toward alkalinity, you start with getting up late, putting things off, procrastinate, and then deeper in, that would be maybe despondence, just really not getting things done and starting to dread. And then way down is depression. Pull the sheet over the head and say, I'm not getting up today. I just can't face the world.
Wow.
Now,
Yeah.
acidity is different. With acidity, you get up early and you get a lot of things done, like you're firing up, but your social graces are not so great. You tend to be argumentative, interrupt people, cut in, drive aggressively, cut into traffic, all the way to road rage.
Wow.
And in the extreme situations, we have people in rage, if it's externally expressed, like attacking others, or in anxiety, internally expressed, attacking themselves, reliving their past. I should have, I shouldn't have, this and that, or imagining future, just imagining all the horrible things that will happen if this, then that. So that's anxiety territory. So
Yeah.
so some people are variable. Women can be variable in their cycle before ovulation, after ovulation, or sometimes some people are intraday, like the morning is in one mode and evening is another mode.
Interesting.
But most people are stable. And so in the oxidizers, we have people who are overly acidic. They're known as fast, or overly alkaline. They would be known as the slow oxidizers.
Okay.
And so you're out there in the extreme, but you would like to live in the middle, like in the middle of
those extremes don't sound good.
Right. In the middle, you're flexible. You can be kind, but aggressive as needed. Whereas if you're out in the corner here, you only go aggressive. You have no other option. You're just so wired. And if you're in this corner, you're just passive and accepting and don't get much done and stuff like that. So if you happen to be waking up acidic as a fast oxidizer, the worst thing you can do is eat a carby breakfast, because you're going to take yourself way out into the far edges of your dysfunction. So you need to be eating a breakfast that's the good old farmer, 2 eggs with a piece of something fleshy, right?
Yes.
You don't make a good vegetarian as a fast oxidizer. Now, as a slow oxidizer, you wake up somewhat depressed, and the only way you get out of it is with carbs.
Interesting.
Right? Because the vector that drives the oxidizer is pointing toward acidity with carbs. So if you're already out there in alkalinity, you need that to be normal. Whereas if you wake up as a slow oxidizer and you eat something fat, like that farmer breakfast, You're going to get depressed. You get nothing done that day.
Wow.
So now we flip that. The other one is the autonomic. And the autonomic system, we know it quite well. It regulates all the non-function. How do we call it? It regulates the stuff that we usually don't have to pay attention to, like heart, digestion, and stuff
breathing.
like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, the sympathetic side is the acidic side. The parasympathetic side is the alkaline side. But now, if you wake up as a parasympathetic, you must eat fatty things to get normal, whereas starchy things will take you over the edge. Like imagine Ernest Hemingway as a parasympathetic, and he starts drinking. The more he drinks, the more depressed he gets. Right? That's the story. So that's the whole thing of learning about pH, how the internal fluid pH, and how it affects your mood. People who are overly acidic will be speedy and will be really smart, but really abrasive. Whereas the alkaline people, they can't think clearly.
Yeah, brain fog, slow.
Yeah.
And so once we learn about ourselves, we can use food to help balance.
That's it. So we do a carbo push and we do a fat push, and we watch our responses. So I give myself a carbo push, something stupid like a bowl of cereal with a banana on top. Well, we can try just plain alcohol. The really amusing part is going to a party where alcohol is served, and you will start seeing where the oxidizers are getting louder and more aggressive, and they get into arguments and possibly into physical altercations. Like they just really take it on. Whereas the autonomics, they are drifting into alkalinity. So first they are jovial and friendly, then they are oversharing. No, first they say things that they wish they hadn't, and then finally they fall asleep.
Wow. So it's not just the alcohol, it's that impact.
It's the carb, which is affecting the pH, which is giving rise to the behaviors.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's a cool test. If you
don't do the alcohol push for breakfast, guys.
Are a person who has used alcohol, you will probably know which type you are.
Where you fall.
By how you have reacted to that.
Gotcha.
Right?
And what about for those that might change throughout the day? Well, I would imagine that's a little tougher to figure out.
Yeah, you could have a response A in the morning and response B in the evening.
Okay.
They're rare, but it does happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Just curious. And I guess the cycling women, it makes sense that there's certain times in the month where women, not all women, many women need more carbs.
Yes.
And so that's really fascinating.
So that's genetically predetermined, essentially.
Wow. Interesting.
So this is the testing, right? So you can do some carb tests somehow. And how you respond is either by becoming more aggressive, which is this side, acidic, or more dopey or docile, which is the alkaline. And then you can reconfirm by doing the opposite test. Take a spoonful of coconut oil and just eat that straight up. And within 20 minutes, you'll have your answer. It's either calming you down or it's making you irritable. Right?
Interesting. So now I'm like, I want to play.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to play.
Actually, I probably don't have to play because I don't feel well when I eat a lot of carbs. So,
but which not well, right? Are you not well because you're anxious, or are you not well because you're depressed?
Depressed, probably. Yeah. I don't know. For me, I mean, I get inflamed, so.
Yeah, you don't even go there.
I
know. So you can try overdoing the fat.
Yeah. Well, I was keto for several years in my healing journey and felt great. So I think I know for me, I do better high fat, low carb.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It all comes down to really paying attention and listening to mood, body.
And so there are some people who are more stable. Their base is kind of wide. meaning like a sumo wrestler with feet wide apart and crouched down, I'll be hard to push over.
Sure.
Whereas if I stand on one foot with my eyes closed, all you have to do is push with your finger and I'm off. So
Yeah.
there are some people who are stable and some people who are quite easily moved. So it won't take too much of a difference, right? Like a one
Yeah.
spoonful of rice may be all that takes you from so-so to okay, or from so-so to not okay.
Right. Wow. Interesting. And so you're explaining it to us kind of by mood and behavior. I'm guessing this also impacts us in other ways.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Satiety is a function of how well you have combined fats, proteins, and carbohydrates in your meals. If you're hungry early, or if you're craving starchy, or if you're whatever, that's just all imbalance in your meals that you can correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
So back to those macros, they matter, huh?
Yeah. For example, the overly acid people will end up with cancer that's of the closed tumors, like breast cancer or colon cancer or ovarian cancer or prostate or that sort of thing. Whereas the overly alkaline people will get leukemia or myelomas or the non-tumor forming cancers.
Interesting.
Not that I'm guaranteeing you that you
No.
illness, but you will be way more likely to get ill if you are mismanaging into whatever territory, right? Like the outer reaches
Gotcha.
are less stable and more likely to manifest problems. So bringing it to the center is a good policy.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's always tends to be. I mean, sometimes we can visit the edges, but
Sure.
living in I always say, it's back to foundational, which is so fascinating.
Yeah.
How did you get into this? Yeah.
Well, back in 2012, 2010, somewhere around then, I found the book by Bill Walcott and I read it. And it just was just like a light bulb went off. That's why the books that I was reading about, back then, most books were written for sympathetic dominant people, where they would write these books where they were saying protein is acidifying and fat is acidic, and the best thing you can do is carrot juice. Well, it works for some people.
Gotcha.
You have Max Gerson, who saves people from cancer with his carrot juice and coffee enema policy.
Right.
But then there was this woman, Johanna Budwig, from Germany, who invented this mix of flax oil with cottage cheese, which is fats and oils.
Right.
And she was curing cancer with that. And then a woman calls me up and she said, I went to the something institute, starts with an H. I can't think of the word right now. They're healing people by going raw food vegetarian.
Yep.
And after 3 weeks of that, she was on her deathbed.
Yeah.
So I said, well, now you know that is not your way. You need to go buy yourself a salmon and cook that and eat that with a salad and call me in a week.
Yeah.
And sure enough, right? Not a raw foodist vegetarian. She was and so there are these three main adaptations: coastal, inland, and farming, right? The hunters in cold climates, let's just say Norway, you would be eating dried cod and fresh salmon and, I don't know, reindeer. You would have growing season compressed into about 90 days.
Yeah.
North of 60, there's not a whole lot of summer.
Right.
So then you have these coastals like Germany, England, whatever. Most of those people were fishing.
Right.
Back actually in Europe, back in up to maybe 1800, there was a lot of salmon in the rivers.
Oh, interesting.
I read a report from where I grew up, Czech Republic, and the what's their name? The servants were protesting that salmon be served no more than 3 times a week.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Interesting. Yeah. It's kind of like organ meats. Like, that was.
Okay, so yeah, let's dive into this one. So there's this thing called endocrine dominance, which we also determine in the metabolic typing test, and there are 3 major ones: thyroid, adrenal, or pituitary. And women can also have ovarian dominance. In men, all men are testosterone drive anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, the thyroid dominant person would be slim limbs, like, I'm one of those. You can put my hand, my fingers around my wrist. Slender arms, slender legs, tend to put on weight in the middle. So if they dysregulate, they end up looking like a big belly with stick legs.
If they dysregulate.
Yes, yeah. Otherwise, if they do regulate, men look like basketball players, volleyball players. Women look like the Victoria's Secret models. Leggy, trim, just,
May not be busty, though. They might just be
slender. Some are quite busty, some are not.
Yes.
Yeah. The adrenal types, they're dominant. Well, they favor savory foods rather than starchy foods. So their health food, and they put on weight by eating fats and lose weight by eating salads or carbs. Whereas the thyroid dominant are gaining weight by starch and losing weight by fat. So a thyroid dominant person on a keto diet is skinny. A dominant person on a keto diet is gaining weight out of style.
Wow. Interesting.
That's why we have all these different diets. You have to pick the right one.
Right. That people ask me all the time, well, what do you eat? I'll just eat what you eat. And I'm like, well, but you're not in my body.
Yeah, there we go. Exactly that. And so the third one is the pituitary. The fat distribution on a pituitary is pretty even, like Cabbage Patch Doll or Pillsbury Doughboy. So you have fat ankles and fat knees, but it's just straight up. They are not that common, but you find them. It's usually the typical nerd kind of visage, larger head, curly hair, legs are X-shaped. These people tend to be supremely smart. And they usually crave creamy things, whipping cream, ice cream, creamy stuff. And to them, their health food is salad, but the most healthful thing to them is organ meats.
Ah, okay.
And to them, organ meats is health food. So we now have this thing called purine. Purine is a protein that's richly present in the organ meats and red meats. Mm-hmm. And some types do better with it than others. Thyroids, they don't do well on that. They do better on fish than they do on red meat. But if you are a fast oxidizer thyroid, you probably can handle all the red meat that can come your way. And if you're a pituitary, again, I don't know, fast oxidizer, you should be on a diet of raw liver and cooked tongue. The highest purine foods are brain, liver, kidney, heart, tongue. In the plant world, it's cauliflower, asparagus. In fish world, it's sardine, anchovy, a few others. But I would have to dive into the list to say it straight up. But
interesting. And so is there a connection then with, if we're talking purines and meats and organ meats, then immediately I think of, the people that would tend to get gout easier than other people.
Right.
Is that related?
The thyroid types are more likely to get gout if they stay on red meat. They will probably do better on more vegetarian and the lighter, white fish.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's me. I am one of those. I'm a sympathetic dominant. You can hear me talk. I'm talking quite aggressively, right? That's my natural acidic modality. I can kind of, well, I can slow down, but it's a put on. Right.
Disingenuine. Yeah.
Right.
Just be you.
Right. Whereas I would expect you to be more on the pleasant, friendly,
I
jovial,
like,
yet easy
yeah.
side, right?
Yes.
You have the look of it.
Yeah.
So we can guess and we can just say, okay, I'll have to live with it. That's me. So if you are a thyroid dominant, you'll lose weight with fat.
Yep.
If fat makes you depressed, now you're a depressed, skinny person.
No, not good.
So you need to find the edge.
Yep. Okay.
You need to find the balance where you're eating just enough fat to make you not gain weight, but not so much that it makes you feel whatever.
Right.
You can be a skinny bitch, right?
You can be.
Which is the opposite, right? That's the autonomic thyroid combination.
It's fascinating to me. I was so excited to learn from you today.
All right.
It's great.
Okay, so now that overlaid over top of it, right? The rules that must be followed. Do not eat refined foods. No refined grains, no refined fats. What are they? Plant oils. No refined salt, no refined sugar, no dairy that has been pasteurized or homogenized. Just don't do it.
Amen. I remember as a kid thinking it was so strange. My family was in the dairy business, and by the time I was growing up, it was all homogenized and pasteurized.
Yes.
And then I remember when they came out with ultra pasteurized, my dad was like, we've already ruined it enough.
Yeah, the 3-month can of milk, lots of milk, right? It will last 3 months.
Yeah. Ugh.
When I was a kid, the milk would go bad by the evening, and it would always separate, right? Like we just kept the regular thing.
Yeah.
But then I learned since that there are two kinds of cows, northern cows and southern cows. The southern would be called buffalo. And so they're typically in India or southern France, southern Italy. And so dairy made with milk from those is way friendlier to the human than the northern breed like Holstein, Jersey, and so on. The unfortunate thing is that the Holsteins and Jerseys have a better yield. They produce more butterfat.
Yeah.
And so they are preferred by the dairy industry, but shouldn't be.
Yeah.
The other day I found mozzarella bufala in
my favorite.
Right?
Love it.
Right. And so those of us who don't have the genetics to handle the northern cow, we can handle the southern cow.
Yes.
And if we can't handle that, we should be able to handle sheep or goat.
Yes. Those are my sheep, goat, and buffalo. That's the zone I live in.
Right. So I have this client goes to India, eats all the paneer she wants, comes back to America and eats paneer and breaks out.
Yeah. Well, I have, I know people with the diagnosed celiac that can enjoy pasta in Italy. What we've done in this country to our food system is horrifying.
I was in Italy, hosted by a naturopath, and there was nothing else other than Italian bread and pasta to be had. So I thought, well, it's 3 days. What the heck? How bad can it get? Nothing happened, right? I was fine.
That wild.
Here, I cannot touch it.
Don't do it here. Yeah.
So I'm asking him, and he says, grano. That's the Italian for grain. He says, oh, yeah, we grow it. It's regulated. We grow it to the old Roman standard. It still is the 4-foot-tall Durham wheat, not the dwarf. And it's not fertilized. It's not treated with herbicides, pesticides, you name it. It's just organic to the 2,000 years ago standard.
Amazing.
And what's interesting, Americans were so proud to have raised the protein level in their wheat to 13%.
Yeah.
The Italian.
And look at us now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I cannot touch it. And yeah, it's I'm a broken person.
No, you're not. It's the food system that's broken.
Oh, darn.
It's not you. That means I'm broken too, and I do not identify.
I called myself a broken jar. I've been glued back together, but I'm not as good as new.
That's where they make art with that in Japan, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
the
And
injuries.
just fill it in with gold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think, this is totally an opinion question, but I'm curious. You already mentioned the higher gluten content, what we do here, but do you think that the glyphosate plays a big role as well in why we have such a gluten intolerance, wheat intolerance?
Okay. Two things that are antibiotics that we have in our system that we don't understand are antibiotics. Chlorine, we put chlorine in water to kill dangerous microbes, but when we ingest chlorinated water, it's the nuclear explosion all the way down to the end. The second thing is glyphosate was originally patented as an antibiotic.
I did not know that.
Here's how it works. It actually kills the microbes that are facilitating the nutrient uptake at the root of the plant. So it doesn't kill the plant, it kills its ability to get nutrition, and it doesn't burn, it just withers, right? And it withers because it starves. So when you put these trace amounts of glyphosate in, it is antibiotic, and that's the effect. Therefore, you are essentially creating a leaky gut effect or microbial dysregulation, which takes you all the way onto the autistic spectrum.
Yeah.
And that's
and autoimmune. Yeah. I mean,
that's the story of glyphosate. It's horrible.
And it's everywhere here. I have a good friend who lives in Iowa. When she comes to visit me in Colorado, if it's in the summer, the first thing she wants to do is go to a lake, because she won't get in the water in Iowa because it's just.
Yeah, that's the horrible thing. This thing is water soluble.
Yeah.
It means when you put it on the field and it rains, it dissolves and it goes into the ground. So it poisons the wells, poisons the ditches, poisons the surface water, which is the rivers and lakes. Yeah.
So again, back to this learning how, your metabolic typing, and understanding, we're looking for middle of the road. We want to be balanced.
Yeah. The important learnings, right? Once you know your endocrine type, you know how you gain weight or lose weight. So you don't have to worry about that. Once you know your metabolic type, you know how to, for example, go to sleep, right? Like if you are an autonomic, things that slow you down are carbs, and things that wake you up are fats. So if you want to stay up late, eat steak and lots of olive oil in your salad. But if you want to sleep, don't do that.
Wow.
I don't know what to recommend. Maybe a banana or 2 shots of whiskey, if that's your thing.
Or create really good routines and,
Right. And so, but if you're an oxidizer, vice versa, right? You're going to be falling asleep on pushing fat. So if you are not going to sleep, if you're staying awake, it's probably your pH that's too acidic. Figure out some way to tilt it. But you need to know your type to do it right. Otherwise, you'll do the wrong thing.
And you recommend people experiment with it.
Yeah, you must. And start at breakfast, because you will have the rest of the day to correct it, right? Like if you make yourself acidic by taking carbs, your antidote is a fat. You can go into the fridge and fix it.
Interesting. Well, you're convincing me. I tend to lean toward the carbs for breakfast is just not a great idea. But
there are healthy
for some people it is.
There are healthy carbs there. You can find it, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I just, I've met so many people who come in and they're like, I eat healthy. I have oatmeal for breakfast. I don't know why I have diabetes and I can't lose weight.
Okay, well, so
For
you're
them.
probably a fast oxidizer, and you
Yeah.
should never ever touch carbs in your
Yeah.
life, including fruit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I will, you're going to make me gentler. I just actually read an art. I didn't read the article. I saw the headline and I was like, what? About, eating this fruit at bedtime will, now I'm trying to remember what it was going to cure. I can't remember. I didn't read it, but there is a time and a place, and working with clients especially around sleep, so that it is fascinating to put it together. That,
for example, myself, right? I'm a sympathetic dominant, so I wake up early and I wake up ready to go. And the longer I don't eat, the more acidic I get. So I'm by 2 p.m., if I don't eat, I'm pretty bitchy.
yeah.
So
hangry.
I could start me with a watermelon, put some grapefruit on later, and then maybe some apple and maybe a banana by 11, and then I'm ready for lunch.
Interesting.
Right? So
Yeah.
And there's a cascade to fruits. You want the wateriest early and the thickest later.
And why is that?
Oh, just digestion.
Okay. So start out gentle.
Yeah, start with a I don't know, grapefruit or an orange if you're gonna eat that, and then graduate to apples later and whatever. But you can have a fruit salad. I don't care.
Interesting. And then you're adding in your proteins later in the day.
Right. Yes. Oh, interestingly, so for example, for the thyroid types, they they do best on 3 same-size meals in a day, and each meal should have some protein, which is challenging. Like I just recommended my meal to be fruit, and yet I should be eating some protein. So
Uh-oh.
break your rules.
Well, again, the rules are general, right? And then we individualize.
Right.
So
But
what
anyway,
about?
sorry. So the thyroid types tend to be craving starchy things in the evening if they didn't have enough protein throughout the day.
Makes sense. Yeah.
I can just visualize myself at 8 p.m. looking for some cookie or something sweet, starchy anyway.
And that's your signal that you didn't get enough protein.
Yep.
Interesting. And what about like the adrenal types? Do they have a meal pattern like that?
They like savory. They get seduced by sausages and bacons and just meals that are cooked and rich.
Okay.
And they gain weight on fat and lose weight on carbs. So they're
Are
slim.
they in the
That should be-
minority? Are they in the minority, kind of, or no?
To describe the person, men are built like a weightlifter, a linebacker, just big
Gotcha.
shoulders, deep chest. In
Okay.
women, mostly you find them in gymnastics, like
Okay.
I don't know, Johnson. What was her first name? Shawn Johnson. She's 40 now. Or
Is she really? Oh my gosh.
what's this recent one? Gosh, can't think of her.
Oh, I had it and now it's gone.
Yeah. Anyway, she won the most decorations.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing.
Biles is the last name. I can't think of it.
Simone. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway,
See, together we can do
she's
it.
a classic, compact, deep chest, strong limbs, all of that, right? Yeah.
Interesting. Fascinating. So if we're working on healing, because just from living on the planet these days, even if you didn't get amalgam fillings or you don't have your finger on exactly what tipped you over the edge into chronic inflammation, I'll say just across the board.
Yeah.
This sounds like a really important step for healing.
Yes. Well, I'd say that illness stands on 4 pillars, and it's toxicity, malnutrition, stagnation, and trauma. And these days, I add to trauma electromagnetic frequencies. All the Wi-Fi stuff that you can't see.
Yeah.
there's this concept or this system called voltage-gated calcium channels.
Yes.
And the millimeter waves are triggering all of your cells to start flooding with calcium. And calcium is the signaling molecule for fight or flight, stress side, the stress side of the autonomic system. It's balanced by magnesium. So you need to supplement magnesium if you're living in a Wi-Fi world.
Which is everybody. So just period. You need to supplement with magnesium, period.
Yes, yes. And but trauma is in concepts in your subconscious that all should be dealt with. I don't think we should get into it too deep here today, but
Sure.
definitely work on finding ways to deal with all that.
Yeah.
Stagnation is a miserable thing. We are sedentary creatures and should not be. When you don't have, how do I say this? We are a dynamic, balanced creature. I inhale, exhale, I ingest, excrete, I interact with the world all the time, and I must create movement. And so, for example, when you walk for 30 minutes a day, you don't get constipated, right?
Well, and if you think of our lymphatic system requires movement.
Yeah.
To
Supremely
work.
important. Otherwise, you're turning into a swamp.
Yeah. And you feel like a swamp too.
Yeah.
You do. You do. So, yeah.
Okay. So then what else? The malnutrition. Of course, the industrial food is presenting us with these highly processed, super seductive foods that pretend to be nutrition. And the general idea of calorie rich but nutrient poor is too common in the processed foods.
Wow.
The malnutrition happens at the tail end of eating in fast food restaurants or restaurants in general and buying groceries as we are presented them.
Yeah, and boxes and bags and yes. Yeah.
So we need to compensate for that. You need to push the pigments, the rainbow foods, and you need to even concentrated foods. We actually have a business. I'm the CEO of a company called Exula Foods, where we manufacture these superfoods. So those are highly.
So we can compensate for what we're getting.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Just a little detail. For example, the mineralization of vegetables today is about 10% of what it was 150 years ago. So now you would have to eat 10 pounds of broccoli to make up what your grandmother got out of a pound of broccoli herself.
It's incredible. I'm hoping that regenerative farming will start taking hold now.
Oh, heck yeah. I am
We
so
need it.
hopeful. I'm so hopeful now.
Yeah.
That I'm hopeful that Kennedy gets his way.
Yeah.
And we'll see changes in how things are done, both in big food, big chemistry, big
Pharma.
pharma, the name, all of the large business.
All the big blank. Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping that money will be taken out of politics and outcome, merit will prevail over whatever the heck we have right now.
And the beautiful thing is I know, we know the body can heal, and they've also already proven so can the earth.
Yes.
So hopeful is the word. That's the word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last of them is toxicity, and there's plenty of it. Think of volatile organic compounds, all the smelly things that are presented to you. Some of them you can't smell, like formaldehyde from the laminated flooring that you just put in your house,
right?
Or the vinyls and whatever else that's gassing off in your nice new car. All of those things. Those people with our genetics should never buy a new car.
Yes, true.
2 years, 3 years, that's how long it takes for it to just gas off.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you said all those smelly things. I am very rarely have I ever had anybody say, "Can you smell that?" And I haven't been way ahead of them. And it is, I believe, a sign of, being a poor detoxer and having, that's something I work on all the time is
Yes.
detox. Yeah.
So I am using zeolite every day. It's a binder. It binds the VOCs. It binds ugly plastics and it binds ugly metals. So
And you use it away from other supplements and things?
no, I just take a capsule of it with my morning drink, which has
Okay.
Himalayan salt, iodine drops, and what the heck else? Oh, humic and fulvic and zeolite.
Nice.
That's my insurance policy every morning.
Yeah. Well, which is, it is so important. I think we have come so far from our natural state and nature that we need to supplement with certain things. We need to make conscious choices about things to compensate for the world we live in. So I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing. You put on an extra jacket if it's cold outside. Well, living here now in the industrialized world, there are no exceptions. You probably have to take the zeolite because you are getting toxins. I mean, you're in traffic, and the metals that are in the brake pads of the automobiles are wearing off every time somebody steps on the brakes.
Right.
And the rubber that's wearing off on the tires, and the exhaust that's coming on from the engine, and so on.
Yeah.
Like, all you have to do is just get in traffic. You're inhaling it.
Or if you live in farm country, then your neighbors are using things you might not like. Your body may not like.
2 billion tons a year in the United States
It's
of
insane.
glyphosate.
It's crazy.
Not tons, 2 billion pounds.
It's still crazy.
Yeah. No, it's this much is too much.
Amazing. You've already given us so much to think about, but what is one step that listeners can take starting today to improve their health?
Well, the one thing is pay attention to your moods, and then look back what you ate an hour earlier and how the balance was. Was it more fatty or was it more starchy? And start fiddling with that.
I love it. I love just something that most listeners haven't been doing. So I think that's fantastic. And where is you, and we'll have all the links in the show notes, but where's the best place to find you for people that are listening on the go?
Yeah, through the website, life-enthusiast.com. We are on media, on LIFENTCO, on YouTube and Telegram and X. We're there.
Love it. Amazing. Martin, thank you so much for your time and your depth and wealth of knowledge that you shared with us today.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
For everyone listening, remember you can get the show notes and transcripts by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.